Imagine you work 50 years of your life and then the Fed prints 40% of the money supply in a few years and essentially steals 20 years of your time. If the person had just moved their money out of the fiat system into the Bitcoin system, they would have been protected from that. And I found that the more that you incorporate Bitcoin principles into your life, the better your life becomes. Bitcoiners see how the fiat incentives really corrupt the money system. I saw the exact same thing in medicine. I've been working as a doctor in the hospital for about 15 years. I'm an internal medicine physician and I take care of patients when they're in the hospital. But once I had this awakening, I cut back my shifts. I'm basically working half time and just realized it's so much better to put my energy into this Bitcoin system. As we're doing that, as we're building these parallel systems, we're going to need to have a bridge from the fiat world into these parallel systems that we create. Your money and your health kind of are two sides of the same coin. We need to do everything we can to make sure that our energy is not being drained from us. My life has just gotten so much better because I've been able to see this.
Before we get started with all the topics, maybe you can give a short overview of who you are and why you're excited about Bitcoin.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the pod. I've been watching your pod for a while now, and it's an honor to be here. So yeah, I'm Dr. Satoshi. I actually work as a doctor. I've been working as a doctor in the hospital for about 15 years. I'm an internal medicine physician, and I take care of patients when they're in the hospital. So I'm a hospitalist. And I take care of conditions like heart attacks, strokes, diabetic emergencies. And I've always loved doing what I do. I've always wanted to be a doctor. I've always wanted to help people. And so throughout my career, I never really questioned it. And I was always on this path that I always saw for myself, and I was happy and making good money. But when I really got into Bitcoin about 5 years ago, it really just changed my lens on how I saw everything in the world, including how I saw medicine. And once I had this shift in my lens and the way I saw things, I started to look at my job differently. And I started to see that in the same way we Bitcoiners see how the fiat incentives really corrupt the money system, I saw the exact same thing in medicine. I saw how the fiat incentives are basically just causing so much corruption in medicine, and it was very disillusioning for me to see that and accept that, because prior to seeing that, I just accepted everything, and I assumed that medicine was there to heal people and to help people. But once I saw the fiat incentives, I saw that it was really more about profit and about control, and just how politicized it was, and how it's really top-down control and very centralized, which is exactly what we see in the financial system. And that's exactly what a lot of Bitcoiners see in the financial system, and that exposes the corruption, is just seeing how centralized it is. And that's the exact same case with medicine. It's so centralized, and it's all about profit and not about the individual and not about healing. And so ever since I've had this change in my lens, it changed the way I approach my job. So prior to having this realization, I was just putting all of my energy into my job and into the fiat system, thinking that was a good place to put my life force, because I was thinking that I was really helping people. But once I had this awakening, I cut back my shifts. I'm basically working half time, and just realized it's so much better to put my energy into this Bitcoin system and help this Bitcoin system grow. So it's essentially like I'm unplugging from the fiat illusion and from the fiat matrix slowly. And I think that's how it's going to be for a lot of people, is that we're not just going to be able to immediately leave fiat and go into the Bitcoin world. Although some people have been able to do that, and it's very inspiring to see that. But I think for a majority of people, it's going to be this transition. And so I think that's what my journey has been, and that's what I want to inspire other people. I want to inspire other people with my journey, to show that once you have this Bitcoin awakening, I want to show people how you can navigate the traps of the fiat system and start waking people up to this fiat illusion, because it's not until you wake up and see this fiat illusion that you start to take your power back and start to navigate it and live a more healthy life.
Yeah, and it's a heavy step that you took there, because it's like people can look at it and like, oh yeah, he just cut his time back and focus a little bit more on this Bitcoin thing. But as you have done it probably since a little bit of a while, and then you cut it back, this really changes how your life is approaching. And even like no matter how old or how long you have done that, this really changes your life. And it probably was a harder decision than you described it as you did. How long was this kind of time frame where you thought about doing this, or like was it like, hey, let's do it, I want to contribute to Bitcoin? I can just talk for me. Like it was a pretty, like, I needed a long time to actually take that step.
Yeah. So it was 2020 when I really started studying Bitcoin more heavily. And then ever since then, I've just been studying more and more. And this is a common thing with a lot of Bitcoiners, is it really shifts your brain and your mindset. And you realize that it's not good to just consume all the time. It shifts you from being a consumer to a creator. So the fiat world is all about just consuming, mindlessly, just consuming content over and over, just scrolling and on the screen. But when you have this Bitcoin shift in mindset, you realize that the importance of being a creator. And so after years of just consuming Bitcoin content, I just basically felt compelled internally in my soul to start creating. And this whole world, this YouTube social media world, is something that I always stayed away from. I always realized how detrimental social media was to your soul, essentially. And so I always stayed away from it. But with this Bitcoin awakening, I realized that it was, if I come at it from a different mindset, in terms of just wanting to be a creator and just spread this message, then it's kind of different than being on social media and being exposed to all the negative aspects of it. I could just kind of hone in on the positive aspects and really just get this message out there. So it essentially was just being overtaken by this Bitcoin ethos, and just needing to basically get this message out there.
Yeah, social media, it gets a lot of shit. But for me, social media, YouTube, podcasting, whatever, like the whole online content space, I would say, it's a little bit like a knife. It's a little bit like fire. You can use it for good and bad.
Yeah.
Some people just use it to go deeper and deeper into the depressions, watch worse and worse stuff, and like just mindlessly scrolling. Other people use it to completely educate themselves. Like everything that I do right now is because of YouTube and podcasting, like everything.
Yeah.
Like only maybe like 5 to 10% that I've learned in school, or, I mean, there's of course like the real world, the mentors and people in my life that are also influencing me. That's a big step also. That's a big contributor, but most of it is just like YouTube and podcasting. You would be astonished how much I learned from YouTube and podcasting. ChatGPT wasn't around when I started. It's around now and it helps me a lot. But now I've learned everything from weird YouTubers that said like, oh, you need to do this and this and this. And I was like, oh shit, he's full of crap. He's kind of helpful.
Yeah.
But yeah, really interesting. I like the concept of proof of work, like this consuming versus creating. And that, like, we all create a little bit, we all consume a little bit. But I think if we create more than we consume, that's always a good thing. Maybe that's an interesting one. How would you, because I think like even in the Bitcoin standard, we need some kind of hospital, some kind of like healthcare system. People will still get sick in some regard. How would you differently have a Bitcoin healthcare system? Like how would the healthcare system work differently on a Bitcoin standard versus right now on a fiat standard?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And that's partly why I think it's important for Bitcoiners to have one foot in the fiat world still, because there's this idea that Bitcoiners can build parallel systems and if we build parallel systems, we can basically create a world that makes the old world irrelevant. And as we're doing that, as we're building these parallel systems, we're going to need to have a bridge from the fiat world into these parallel systems that we create. And so it's going to be important for Bitcoiners to serve as intermediaries and to guide people from this fiat world into the Bitcoin world that we all imagine and can definitely see in the future. But it's tough to say how long it's going to take for us to really move into that hyper Bitcoinized world. So at least during this transition period, we're going to have to accept that we do have this fiat world. And as we're transitioning, what we can do as Bitcoiners is we can infuse that Bitcoin ethos into the fiat world. And so that's what I try to do at my job now. I'm in the fiat world, and I've got protocols I have to follow and rules that frustrate me. But at the same time, I can bring that Bitcoin ethos into my job and talk to my patients and instill in them this sense of sovereignty and taking control of their health and proof of work, and basically help them incorporate these Bitcoin principles into their life. And I found that the more that you incorporate Bitcoin principles into your life, the better your life becomes. So it's actually this reframe that I did in my mind. Instead of just being disillusioned with the system and wanting to leave immediately, I kind of shifted my mindset to thinking, how can I bring the Bitcoin ethos into my fiat job? And I think that's a really important reframe that a lot of people can do, because I know a lot of people are struggling with having this awakening and seeing how broken things are, and being really disillusioned and kind of frustrated and angry. But I think it's important to have a level of acceptance. Just accept that we are where we are now. We're still so early in this Bitcoin process and this hyper Bitcoinization process, and things are going to take time to unfold. But if we're really envisioning how things are going to look far off into the future in this Bitcoin world, it's really all about just the individual taking back control of their health and the individual being more empowered. Right now, we outsource pretty much everything to these centralized systems that don't have our best interest in mind. And that was an important awakening that I had, seeing it in the financial system, when I realized that I was outsourcing basically all of my power to banks and to the stock market, things that are outside of my control. And that's exactly what we're doing right now in medicine and healthcare. We're outsourcing our health to the pharmaceutical industry, to the hospital, when really we should be taking control of our own health and figuring out what makes us healthy, as opposed to relying on these centralized systems and centralized protocols. And when you realize that these centralized systems and protocols aren't actually designed to heal you, they're designed to keep you dependent, it really gives you a sense of urgency that this is something that you need to take control of and you need to be aware of. Because in the same way that in the financial system, if you don't learn about inflation and money printing, you're going to have your energy stolen from you and your life force is going to be drained. It's the same exact thing in health and medicine. If you don't start learning and you don't start taking control and making doing proof of work and taking charge of your habits, then you're going to be at the whim of this system, and the system is draining you of your energy. And so your money and your health kind of are two sides of the same coin. They're both all about your energy, and we need to do everything we can to make sure that our energy is not being drained from us.
Yeah, it's a good point of like health, and with health comes time, and this is the only asset that we have that's more valuable than Bitcoin. Health is pretty important. It doesn't. If you have 30 Bitcoin and you die tomorrow, like what's it all for? It's like if you have all the Bitcoin in the world, but you hustled so hard for it that you're stressed out and you're like, all of your body is not working nicely, and you kind of completely ruined your body because you hustled so hard, because you worked like 50 jobs a week to get like that extra 0.1 Bitcoin. I don't know, like that seems to be a bad trade to do. I mean, of course, like I have a lot of empathy for hard living realities where you have to work really hard. And I worked two sometimes 3 jobs at the same time. And sometimes it's just like this life phases where you have to do those things. But in general, I would say it's not worth it, because you are trading the most valuable asset that you have, your time and your health, which is kind of the same thing, for more Bitcoin. And usually getting more Bitcoin is always best, except in that one case with health and time.
Yeah. With the finances and with the realization that we get with Bitcoin, we realize how important time is. Like you said, there's that meme that's going around now that kind of really highlights this point, that imagine you work 50 years of your life and then the Fed prints 40% of the money supply in a few years and essentially steals 20 years of your time. So 20 years of your blood, sweat, and tears just erased just because the Fed inflated the money supply. So that really highlights just how important it is to value your time and take back your time. And in that example, if the person had just moved their money out of the fiat system into the Bitcoin system, they would have been protected from that. So they would have basically protected 20 years of their life. And if you apply that to health, if you are eating fiat foods and just reliant on fiat medicine, it's essentially guaranteed that your lifespan will be shorter than someone who takes charge of their health and eats healthy and is aware of these fiat foods and fiat traps and navigates away from them. So in the same way that with Bitcoin, you can take back some of your energy and time, it's the exact same principle with health, that if you're aware of these traps and you're aware of these fiat incentives and how these fiat incentives lead to these fiat traps, then you can avoid them and you can add years to your life. And essentially, if you're adding years to your life, that's the most invaluable asset, like you said. So Bitcoiners, it's imperative that they start taking their health more seriously and start applying that same Bitcoin lens to their health.
We often throw around this term fiat food, and we had a whole podcast on that with Matthew Lysiak. I hope I don't butcher his name, on what fiat food is. And I recently, maybe I can show this to you if I find it quickly. I recently actually asked, because it's still a big debate in Bitcoin, what they're eating. You're probably well aware, like more animal based or more kind of it was right here. It got over 1,000 votes, so it's not that, it's kind of popular. And I will just quickly show this to you. And I'm curious, because I want to talk a little bit about food, and I want to talk about like fiat food and what this actually is. And I asked my audience, are you eating mostly plant based or animal based? Just like have like that two separations, not about like processed foods and sugar and all those things. I don't see any results. Do I have to vote to see the results? Let's see. Okay, now we see results. To click something. Yeah. So basically, only plant-based is like very low, and only animal-based is very low also, obviously. So most people just eat both things. And there's like a kind of big group that eats like raw vegan. I thought it's actually smaller than that, because the Bitcoin community is so big on carnivore. And I think I made that post also once with carnivore and vegan. But still, like a majority of people eat animal-based diet. How would you describe like what fiat food is? why this wouldn't be the case with Bitcoin.
Fiat food is basically food that was created based on fiat incentives. So it's food that's ultra processed, has long shelf life, and it's food designed to just maximize profit for corporations, and not food designed to nourish you, not food that's good for you. So corporations, they operate based on maximizing profit. They're beholden to shareholders, and they're not evil. They're not trying to serve you unhealthy food, but based on the incentives, they have to do these things to maximize profit. Otherwise, they won't survive as corporations. So what you get is food that is not actually healthy or nourishing, and it's just food that was convenient for the corporations to produce, and was as cheaply made as possible, essentially. So it's filled with ingredients that are not what's best for you, and it's stuff that actually makes you sick. It makes you inflamed and just wreaks havoc on your metabolic health, and leads to diseases like heart disease, diabetes, obesity, cancer. So all of these conditions are on the rise. And if you look back as to when all of these things started to skyrocket, it traces back pretty well to when we went off the gold standard and when we went on to this fiat system. So the fiat system really just touches everything downstream from it, and essentially everything in our life is downstream from money, including our food systems, including medicine. And so fiat food is essentially just fake food that's not good for you. And it's marketed so heavily, and they put together these marketing campaigns and these labels that can kind of trick you into thinking that maybe it actually is healthy. And one of the prime examples of how things work behind the scenes is the food pyramid. So the food pyramid tells us that we need to eat 6 to 11 servings of grains every day. And this was based on basically falsified research. They paid Harvard researchers to vilify fat, healthy fats, and essentially say that sugar is okay for you. And that kind of led the way for an explosion of processed carbs and seed oils. And so all of this stuff just flooded into our diet. And because the government put out this food pyramid, it essentially gaslights us into thinking that if the government put out these guidelines, then there must be some science behind it. They must be, if we follow this, it must be good for us. It must be nourishing. But in reality, it was all about these backdoor deals and these just falsified research. And so if you're not questioning things, if you're just going by this food pyramid, then you're going to be putting all this stuff into your body that's not good for you. That's leading to inflammation and mental fog and all these chronic diseases. And so on a Bitcoin standard, you essentially get to the truth of things. You don't have these fiat illusions. You get to the truth of things, and you offer value. So companies they wouldn't survive in a Bitcoin world if they weren't being truthful and if they weren't providing high quality products. So this is kind of far off into the future, but in a hyper Bitcoinized world, there are going to be people who have companies and produce food, and the only way that they're going to survive is to deliver actual value to people and to be truthful about what's in the food.
It's really interesting because we take for granted when it comes to like outside of the Bitcoin bubble, we take for granted that if the government says something, there has to be something to it. It's like there's this authority thinking of, oh, it comes from the government, like, yeah, it's good. And it probably is weird for everyone that is listening here to hear that, but just go out in the public and ask them. It's the critical thinking that we have in our community is not normal. Like to 99% of the people, we are the weirdos. We are the ones that think critical. And I think it's because the central bank is such a highly regarded institution in the politician and government world, where you kind of accept that it's there and you wouldn't dare to question the central bank because this is where money comes from and you trust that money. And once you question that, once you go away from that, you're like, oh, wait, that was not true. Wait, inflation is not good for us. Then all of a sudden the box is open to question everything else. And there is a lot of things that are good for us that are there and we don't have to question it. But most of the stuff, it's better if you question it. And there's a balance between leading a happy life and not questioning everything, because like questioning everything can make you very paranoid and like fearful, and like you always just seeing the negative in, like, that's so bad. Like, that's also not the Bitcoin way. I feel like like there should be a healthy balance to like just being a happy human being and accepting reality as it is, and accepting that we're not perfect and that the system is not perfect. But there's also this case of like, don't be a fool. like don't take everything for granted, like question things. So I think there's like a very interesting balance where I think most Bitcoiners actually get that balance. But I see some that like drift too far down and they're like, okay, they see everything as bad and they question, like, they're attacking everything that they don't like a little bit. Where I'm like, like, look on the bright side of life. Like it's pretty, I always say, what a time to be alive. Like, it's pretty astonishing what we can do. We can do things right now that the richest person 200 years ago couldn't do, like a phone, asking and talking with a computer and getting all the information at a fingertip, or like just flying with a plane. Like, that was not always a thing. The planes had to be invented at some point. And so like, we with technology and with the life, we have a pretty good life. And my kind of point is like, we have to find a middle ground and a balance between questioning everything and still living like a kind of happy life and like still being okay with what things are. Like, I don't know if if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it absolutely does, because this can be pretty disillusioning when your eyes get, when you start to become aware of these illusions that we've been living in our whole life. And it can be very disillusioning, and it can make you pessimistic and can decrease the quality of your life. And I think I went through that period for sure. Because it's hard to have your whole reality questioned, and it's hard to see that everything you thought was real may not necessarily be real. But you're right. As Bitcoiners, we can't get stuck in that, because that's not what Bitcoiners represent. And for myself, I've always been a very optimistic person, and so I hate talking about this stuff because I don't want to come across as pessimistic at all. But I've always just been a very pragmatic person, and I've always been a critical thinker. So it's actually not pessimistic to talk about these things. It's very realistic, and if you shift your lens a little bit, or shift your mindset just a little bit, and you just view it as empowering, then it kind of changes everything. So instead of being upset or frustrated or angry, you actually get excited that you're actually seeing the truth. And once you see the truth, you can navigate away from the traps. So it's actually a blessing to be able to see the truth, because then you don't just blindly walk into traps. You don't just blindly follow a path that may not be serving you. I think we all are living in this fiat illusion, and we're living lives that are not necessarily of our own design. We're just so focused on material objects, and now we're just so focused on screens and Netflix and apps But these are not things that our soul really is craving. They're just things that the fiat system guided us down. And if you're not thinking about it, then you're just going to blindly go down that path, and you're going to live your life, and your soul's going to be unfulfilled at the end. But if you can kind of see these traps, then it really is a blessing, because then you can navigate away from them, and you could actually live a life of your own design, and you could actually make progress towards fulfilling and nourishing your soul.
Yeah, there's always an aspect of like the monetary system is broken, and that's why we go down those lanes. Obviously, there's also like a small aspect of like, we invented phones. Those things are pretty amazing. And even on a Bitcoin standard, when you invent phones, they will be addicting to people. But I question, like I asked myself the question a lot, like what would actually change in a Bitcoin standard? Because we could make the argument of, on a Bitcoin standard, there would still be companies that would seek out the maximum profit. Like we see it now with Bitcoin companies, they want to have as many Bitcoin as possible. So the profit thing might not go away, or probably doesn't go away. But the thing is, if we have a Bitcoin standard and the prices are naturally having a deflationary force, and your banana is naturally going to cost a little bit less each year, banana is just a random example, but like everything gets less in price than Bitcoin. This disincentivizes people or companies to do tricks on consumers. So the whole problem, I think, is more with shrinkflation and decreasing in quality, because people really hate paying higher prices for their food. So food is something where people are like, if the same thing costs all of a sudden like 5, 10 or 15% more, they really feel that. They really acknowledge that, and they really hate that. So the incentive is to do shrinkflation, but you can only do so much shrinkflation before people are really noticing that. But then you have this other aspect of like, hey, let's source from not as high quality of products, and let's have some kind of really bad things in there just so we can keep the prices low. And that's, I think, the main flaw. If we wouldn't be on a Bitcoin standard, the prices would anyways deflate. And I personally think that's the main difference between a Bitcoin standard and a fiat standard. Companies probably still will have like profit orientation. I don't know, like, why should this change? But the pressure that we humans are on of the fiat standard, the same pressure a company feels. And a company has to survive, and company has to make profits because of that. And that's why it's like very short-term focused, like month to month, quarter to quarter. And I think on a Bitcoin standard, we just have this like, hey, let's look the next 10 years. And we have a Bitcoin treasury, and that's why we can afford to look that long, because even if next month's sales are down, we can make up for that because we have a good treasury. So let's do the best thing long term. So I don't know, maybe it's just a hope of mine, but I really hope that this long term view is really changing with companies. How do you look at that?
Yeah, the point that you're bringing up is something that I've been thinking a lot about lately as well, because as Bitcoiners, we just assume that in a hyper Bitcoinized world that everything will just automatically get better. And a lot of things will, when you fix the incentives and when you fix the foundation, a lot of things will autocorrect. But I think that as Bitcoiners, we have to realize how important our role as individuals is going to be in this process. This, just because we switch to a hyper Bitcoinized world doesn't mean everything's going to get fixed. We have a huge responsibility to play a huge role in that, and to guide that process. So when you're talking about how in a hyper Bitcoinized world, the companies are still going to be incentivized for profit, that's true. And if the individual doesn't change, or the people don't change, then yeah, not much would actually change in a hyper Bitcoinized world. The change is going to be with the people being more educated, with the people becoming more aware, and when the people realize that they're basically voting with their money, with their sats, that is what's going to lead to change. It's this awareness that's slowly spreading. That's what's going to lead to the change that we're all hoping for. Because as consumers, if we're more aware and if we realize how much power we have with our spending habits, then we basically shape what companies survive and what doesn't. And so if we're aware and if we know what to look for, and if we don't fall for these traps, then we are the ones that are gonna hold these companies accountable. And it's that awareness that's going to lead to that improvement in the hyper Bitcoinized world. And when you have that awareness combined with the foundation, with the sound money, that's what's going to have this synergistic effect that's going to lead to all the changes that we want to see. But I think that's why it's so important for us Bitcoiners to think about these things. Because if we don't think about these things and we just assume everything's going to automatically be better, we might be disappointed, and we might not actually see all the changes we want to see. The changes are going to come from us. And that's why we all need to educate each other, and we need to form these communities so that when we go to spend our money, we realize how much power we have and how much we can shape the world with how we spend our sats.
Yeah, that's a really good point of if we don't care and we just have Bitcoin because, hey, number go up, technology, hey, like we have more money now, and we don't shape the outcome that we wanted to have, nothing will change. Bitcoin can be used such as gold has been used, just as an asset, just laying on some central bank, and we're still using our fiat dollars. We're still using our fiat institutions. We don't do self-custody. We just have the asset on some digital wallet that's controlled by some authority. Then Bitcoin didn't change anything. So if you, for example, don't have Bitcoin in self-custody, what did really change for you? Like you just bought a stock.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that you actually have then at that point.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this idea about how as Bitcoin adoption is increasing, it's going to be very likely that a lot of people that are coming in are not going to necessarily understand the ethos behind it, and they might hold Bitcoin in an ETF, and that's different than holding it in self custody. Because when you hold it in self custody, it kind of forces you to align with the ethos of Bitcoin. But as people are getting more exposed to it and just holding it for number go up, they may not feel that alignment with what Bitcoin represents. And if that's the case, then Bitcoin could just become another asset. So that's why it's so important for people that have felt the effects of Bitcoin and what it does for your soul, and really embody the ethos of Bitcoin to ensure that spreads and that message doesn't get lost. Because the more we spread this message, and the more this Bitcoin ethos gets into the collective consciousness, the more it's gonna shape society in the way we want it to. If this Bitcoin ethos gets lost, then it's not going to make as much change as we'd like. But the more we put this energy out there, the more we put these thoughts out there, the more we actually create and guide the direction that it goes. And that's what I've been thinking a lot about lately, is that it's similar to what I was saying in your previous question, in that we can't just assume everything's going to unfold the way we want it to, because we all see that Bitcoin has this power, and it definitely can change things for the better in a lot of ways. But we really need to take responsibility as Bitcoiners, and also feel empowered as Bitcoiners that we actually can shape how this turns out. Because the more we put it into the collective consciousness, the more that's going to be manifest in physical reality. So that's why it's so important what you're doing and what all Bitcoiners are doing, and every Bitcoiner, no matter what they do, is so important. It's I think for me, I didn't realize how important my role as an individual Bitcoiner was. I just thought I could just consume and that watch things unfold. But we as Bitcoiners are a part of this network. We're individual nodes, but we are so important in building out this network, and we're so important in shaping what it becomes and what we want it to become.
The first time I ever made any money, I got myself from that money a watch. And ever since then, I collect timepieces to remember times where I achieved some milestone. That's why I got the Bitcoin 2025 edition when I went to my first ever American Bitcoin conference. So for me, the Bitcoin watches from CoinVigilante represents the time that we are living in. For every person that wears a Bitcoin watch, I know they are representing sound money to the outside world. Make sure to check out those amazing CoinVigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. I know how big of a hurdle it can be to have self-custody, but it's so freaking important to make that first step. We have to make sure it's as easy and simple as possible. And that's exactly what BitBox did. BitBox created the simplest and the easiest hardware wallet to use to get into self-custody. So get yourself a BitBox down from the link in the description. And when you use code Robin, you even get a 5% discount. The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called Microseed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With Microseed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because Microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. And we have right now a summer sale going on for 15% off. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today for $186, and you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Again, that's microseed.io to get your last backup tool you ever need. Yeah, and this is a good point. Like we could just lay around and not do anything for Bitcoin and let Bitcoin do everything for us. But we chose, and I think most people are listening actually chose to be active in a community, put some tweets out there, defend Bitcoin when there's a neighbor saying, oh, it's bad for the environment. Like all those things actually help. And I often use that war comparison where we are in an information war all the time, online and offline and wherever you meet other people. And you have to stick up for what you stand for. And if you stand for Bitcoin, you have to stick up for Bitcoin. Don't be an ass doing that, but like stand up for what you believe in. And I think one main reason is because we are still so early. We are still in this early cultural thing where, like, if you have a very early company, they're very excited about that new thing, and they're like very innovative and all those things. Then you have to kind of blast it out to everyone, and everyone involved is like very proud to be in that community. And because of that, we're in a similar stage with Bitcoin, because after 16 years, a company would already be very mature, but money has a different timeline. Money, the first 20 years is in the startup phase. So we are still in the startup phase of Bitcoin, and everyone that gets involved in Bitcoin is very proud and be in this thing. And the main thing I want to say here is, I think at some point Bitcoin will be boring, but we're very far away from that, meaning Bitcoin will be such a fundamental part of our financial system that it will be very boring to even talk about it, because it's just like part of it. And that's where we want to where we wanted to be. But today we are so freaking early, and nobody maybe you have a good framework to think about that. You also said it in the beginning, I think, that we are still so early. How do you describe to people that say like, oh, 100K, we already reached like the top, and all like we have 16 years now, it's only going down, and they're like, oh, it don't has a big potential anymore. How do you make people aware that this is just the beginning and how early we actually are?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people are still staying away from Bitcoin because they see the price being over 100K, and they think, oh, I must have missed it, because they saw how the price was so much lower just not that long ago. And psychologically, it is hard to buy something when it's over 100K, and you don't understand what it is and where it's going. But if you understand what it is and how it fits in terms of historical trends, like if you look at the internet adoption and you kind of line up Bitcoin with where we are with the internet, it shows that we're still so early. And if you look at how adoption works in terms of like the S curve and how things, because our brains cannot comprehend exponential processes. Our brains think linearly. So if you only think linearly, you can't really comprehend. Your brain can't really understand exactly how early this is. But if you understand the exponential nature of adoption, and if you understand really the problem with our current system, that's key as well. Because if you don't understand the problem with our system, then you don't understand what Bitcoin solves for. But if you understand all the money printing and where we are in terms of this fourth turning cycle and our money basically being at the end of its cycle, and how the money is essentially dying, then if you have that framework, then you realize that Bitcoin is inevitable. And when you think of fiat and all the money printing, and you realize that really has no limit, they could just keep printing endlessly. And so it's essentially shorting that system. So if you know for sure they're going to keep printing endlessly, then you can just put your money in Bitcoin and watch it rise. It's pretty incredible that we have this asymmetric opportunity. And right now is actually, I've heard this argument a lot, that right now is actually the best time to get in. Obviously, it would have been better to get in earlier when the price was lower, but earlier there were so many unknowns, and it may not have actually been that great of a move. Right now, it's just so obvious. There's all of the regulatory framework is coming into place. There's so much less uncertainty. It's just so inevitable right now that even though the price does look high at over 100K, it's just going so much higher and with so much less risk than before, that now actually is a better time than any time to get in.
There is, I still can't believe those numbers. When I look at exponential growth, there's this folding paper example. There's this football filling stadium example of like with water. And I just found a new one, and I had to look it up to really make sure it's correct, because like exponential growth seems so crazy to me that I still can't believe the numbers, but yeah, they are true. And the situation is, if there is a sealed room and the virus is, and also great with a doctor today on, and the virus is spreading exponentially, doubling every 30 seconds, we have the room completely full with the virus after 60 minutes. And here's the kicker. After 59 minutes, we have the room full with just 50%. So we need we need 59 minutes to fill the room half full, and then we need one more minute to come to a complete state of the virus spreading to 100% of the room. That's crazy. Also, like the folding paper example, I think like almost everyone heard it. Like you can fold a paper, and like if you fold it 42 times, you're at the moon, or some crazy example like that. And those exponential growth, like, I think we cannot comprehend what this really means. We can only think about it, and that's why, like, I think nobody is bullish enough on Bitcoin, because nobody understands that small fact.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. I feel so lucky every day to have been blessed with being able to see this, because once you see it, it's just so obvious. And my life has just gotten so much better because I've been able to see this, and it's basically made me much more relaxed, because I see my colleagues, my doctor colleagues. You would think they make good money. They're kind of sheltered from all this money printing and inflation. But every year I see my colleagues getting more and more stressed, because they intuitively know that their purchasing power is getting lower every year. And that's hard on your nervous system, to know that you're going to be having to spin faster and faster on this hamster wheel every year with no end in sight. That's just not sustainable. Whereas me, or anyone that moves their life force or their money into Bitcoin, you get the opposite effect on your nervous system. So your cortisol levels will drop. You can just relax. You can start working less and have more time to really contemplate these deeper things in your life, and really think about what your life purpose is outside of this fiat hamster wheel. And so, yeah, I view it as a blessing every single day, because if I didn't discover Bitcoin, I'd be trapped in that fiat race, and that is just a recipe for just destroying your soul and health problems. So Bitcoin really is just this lifeboat and this savior. And now I can rest assured that my purchasing power is only going to increase over time, which just increases the optionality, and just gives my future so much more possibilities. The fiat world is so limiting. You're just only on this one track, and you just have to keep spinning faster and faster on that track. Whereas if you get off of that and shift your money into the Bitcoin world, then you're living a completely different life. You're just so much more relaxed. Things look differently. Your aperture widens. It's such a beautiful thing, and that's why I wanted to start Dr. Satoshi and just spread this message, because the difference in my life has been profound, and in every possible way. And I know that if other people are open to it, they will have similar effects in their life as well.
It's interesting because you said you're in a hospital, so, and you see a lot of people with like heart attacks and strokes.
Yeah.
And I can imagine it being really hard to see all day long, like heart attacks and strokes and people suffering, like family coming, like being around that area, like that's probably even harder on your nervous system than the inflation. I don't know, like I've not been in that environment, but like I could imagine.
Yeah, you have to have a certain personality, and for some of my colleagues, I can see that it just drains them. But for me, when I see people going through a lot of hard times and suffering. For me, for some reason, my brain just processes it in a way where it makes me more grateful for my own health. So when I see suffering, it makes it so that I can't be concerned about my little problems when I see people being diagnosed with cancer, or I can't be concerned about a parking ticket when I see so much suffering every day. So I've kind of reframed it where it just really puts things into perspective for me, and makes it so that I really appreciate my health, because health really is everything. And having this Bitcoin mindset actually does make it a little bit more heartbreaking in the way that you described, because I see people with these conditions. And before, I used to think that, oh, it was just inevitable. It was their genetics. There's nothing they could have done to prevent this. But now when I see people coming in with these medical conditions, I see that there's a high likelihood that this fiat world has contributed to their medical conditions, because heart attacks and strokes, a lot of that is preventable, and a lot of it is caused by eating fiat foods and not being aligned with what actually makes you healthy. So that's also a something that I'm focusing on too, is helping people reclaim their health and navigate away from these fiat traps in the healthcare system.
How is this? How is this with the hospital and being grateful for things? Kind of changed your perspective on Bitcoin, or maybe like influenced your thinking when you discovered Bitcoin?
Well, Bitcoin has just changed my thinking in all aspects. So when I go to the hospital, before I had the mindset that when I saw the suffering, it would make me more grateful. But now that I found Bitcoin, it really made me realize that I have a duty to these patients to help them in a different way. Because before, I was more limited in what I thought I could do. I was more, looking back, I was more just a pawn in the system and a cog in the machine. So that when someone comes in with one of these medical conditions, I'm trained to just give them a pill or give them this medication. Whereas now I realize that the pill is not the solution. And a lot of times the pill is actually a part of the problem, because in the fiat healthcare system, a patient comes in with a symptom, and the doctor is trained and indoctrinated to think that every single symptom needs a pill. And so you see patients end up on 10 to 15 pills. Whereas in more of a Bitcoin world, with a Bitcoin mindset, you would not immediately jump to a pill. You would think to talk to the patient and see how their sleep is and see what they're eating. And so that is what has shifted for me, because I realize that I don't want to be just another cog in the machine, just almost like a robot following protocols. I want to actually contribute to healing. And that's part of what Dr. Satoshi represents, is getting to the root cause of things and looking beyond mainstream narratives and really taking charge of your health.
I like that. And the fiat doctor is kind of like just a factory worker. Someone comes in with a complaint and he's like, hey, there's the medicine A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Let's choose B, take it for a week. If it doesn't get better, come back. Oh, let's try medicine C. like that. Like, you don't need a doctor's degree for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like maybe I oversimplified it a little bit. But yeah, that's what I always feel like. If I come with a complaint to a doctor, they're like, oh yeah, we either have to do this operation or this medicine. Like, oh, okay, but like, why do I have that? Like, why did this even that? And then I go on the internet and it's like, okay, like, what did it cause that? Like, how can I prevent that? I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, actually I do that. And apparently this is a big cause for that. okay, why did I have to research that? Why did the doctor not tell me that? Like, wouldn't that be good? And that's why I'm like really glad that the internet and ChatGPT and like all those AI tools actually exist, because you can research now way faster and way than not relying on a doctor anymore.
Yeah, our bodies are so powerful, and our bodies are designed to heal themselves. In the fiat system, we've been trained to think that our bodies are not as powerful as they are, and that if something's wrong, you need a pill. But our bodies are so powerful, and they don't need pills. You can heal yourself. And there's this concept of the placebo effect, which is an incredibly powerful effect that shows just how powerful our thoughts are, and how powerful our mind is, and how powerful our bodies are. So a lot of times if you give someone a sugar pill, so it doesn't have any active ingredient in it, it'll be just as powerful and have just the same effect as actually giving them the actual pill that had the ingredient in it. So a lot of the healing is not even the ingredient that's in the pill. It's in your mindset. So that just right there just shows how powerful our minds are. And this is something that the fiat world, or the fiat healthcare system, does not want people to know about. They want people to think that they need a pill so that they can keep them dependent. But this is what this really kind of highlights the dichotomy between these two ways of thinking, because in a world where you can kind of take control of your health, you're not as good of a customer for the pharmaceutical industry or the healthcare system. So they're basically losing money. And so that's why taking charge of your health is so key in this whole process. And discovering Bitcoin really is just the tip of the iceberg. So the first step is to take care of your finances and make sure that you're securing your life force, and that it's not this melting ice cube. That's the first step, and that's a crucial step. But then the next step is looking at your health and figuring out where that also is melting away, and how you're falling into these fiat healthcare traps. Because it's so important for Bitcoiners to take charge of their health. Because if us Bitcoiners are going to be the ones shaping how society unfolds, it's going to be important for us to embody that with our health, and to have that vitality and not be inflamed and have brain fog, which is what happens when you're in the fiat world and relying on fiat medicine. But in a Bitcoin world, having vitality and being aligned with nature, and really just being on top of your health is just very much in line with the Bitcoin ethos.
There is in Austria, and I don't know if that's also an American thing, but in Austria, you're kind of forced to have health insurance, and that health insurance changes depending on what you do. So, for example, if you're an employee, you have a different health insurance than when you're an entrepreneur or self-employed, or if you have like companies and stuff like that. And I recently changed because I got from employment to like being an entrepreneur in Bitcoin. I have a different health insurance now. And they have like those health centers all across the country. And the insurance itself offers like checkups and things like that. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, because they are actually incentivized to keep me healthy. Because if I get sick, they have to pay me. So they have to pay for my things. So like the health insurance, weirdly enough, and it's like in Austria, it's like it's very regulated what you have to pay the health insurance. It's just depending on the income. So they cannot get more money out of you. They kind of have to make you a better entrepreneur to get more money out of you. That's the only way to get more money. So they cannot upsell you on anything or like anything like that. So the only incentive is actually, because the law is so restrictive, the only incentive is to build those health centers and actually make people healthier. And this is the first time that I discovered that in Austria. And I went there, and if I miss a checkup, if like, hey, you should have done that checkup, they're like, hey, like you haven't done that checkup. Don't you want to like see if there's something? And even if there's like small anomalous, there is small like things that aren't fitting. They're like, oh, let's check this. I had a small thing where I went in there and like my blood pressure was a little bit higher. It's always a little bit higher at the doctor. Like when I do it at home, it's perfectly fine. But they're like, okay, but we want to still check everything. And they checked my heart. They checked like everything. Like they checked me up and down. Like I gave them my all my blood and urine and everything like that, which was an interesting journey. But basically, I felt quite good because they never sell many bills. Like they never try to get me on medication for anything. They check everything very, very in detail. They call me back. They give me appointments very quickly. It's like I never had that. And I'm always in Austria. Like it's the same country. I never didn't change the country. It made me think of like, how can we do the whole healthcare system? How can we have a healthcare system that's actually incentivized to keep people healthy because then they have to pay less? And that's where the money lies. Like if a doctor earns more money if they sell them drugs, he will prescribe more drugs. But if a doctor gets paid more, if his clients are more healthier and less with him, then he will prescribe less drugs and say like, hey, go out there, move your body, like do that. And for example, one thing they're also offering is like fitness camps, like retreats for discounted prices and all those things, like to get your health on the way. And it's one small thing that I'm like, hey, like that's a pretty nice thing that they're doing. Like I have like almost like hope in the healthcare system regained this year because of them, because they actually have taken good care and they haven't sold me anything. They haven't advised me to take any bills, and they're like actually giving me nice advice. Like, oh, like look. Like, I mean, all like very simple advice, like no sugar, like more movement and all those things. And just general, like nice, good advice and no Fiat things. I don't know. I don't know if there's something similar that you see also sometimes in the healthcare system with insurance companies, because usually insurance companies are evil for me.
Yeah, no, that sounds very encouraging to hear that you're now part of a system that sounds much better than before. And the system that you're describing sounds much better than anything that they have here. But what you're describing gets to the point that it's all about incentives. It's not about evil people or evil systems. It's all about just how the incentives are. And in the system that you're describing, the incentives are more aligned with actually keeping someone healthy and not causing waste. And unfortunately, at least in the US, the systems are just so entrenched right now that you can't really create meaningful change, because everything's just so entrenched and there's already so much momentum. And to create that system that actually has incentives that are aligned is essentially impossible at this point. You might have one political party come in and make an incremental change that is in the right direction, but it's such an incremental change that it's not enough to really flip around those incentives. And so that's why we really just need a new paradigm. And there's that quote that says you can't really change the system when you're operating from the same system that caused the problem. You need to go up to a new paradigm. And that's basically what Bitcoin represents. There's so many, and not just in healthcare, in the entire world, with everything going on. It's just everything was created in this paradigm, and even if you're well intentioned and want to make changes, they're just going to be incremental changes. But incremental changes in a broken system doesn't really fix much. You really need a new paradigm, and it's incredible that this new paradigm came around. It's actually insane if you think about it. It just came out of nowhere. This whole entire new paradigm, this new way of organizing the world, a new foundation for our culture. And that's why people have so much hope, because without this paradigm shift, without that, be existing, then it would be impossible to create a lot of these changes that need to be made. And that's what happens. Historically, it always happens. You go through cycles where the systems crumble, and then society needs to be rebuilt. And that's where we are now. We're at the end of the fourth turning. We're at a time where there's so much unrest. There's corruption that's a lot more overt than before. People are losing trust in institutions, and a hallmark symptom of being in the fourth turning is the money debasing. And we're there. We're in the middle of the fourth turning, and it's historically that leads to violence and unrest and upheaval as a new world order emerges. And that's what gives me a lot of hope with Bitcoin, is that potentially we can avoid a lot of that unrest and that violence, and we could hopefully shift onto this Bitcoin paradigm and avoid a lot of the downfalls that typically happen at this point in the cycle of a civilization.
It's the ultimate cycle breaker, Bitcoin. It was like, we could actually get out of that. It's interesting. When you talked about pills, I thought like the orange pill is probably the only pill that we need to take. I think there could be a fun catchphrase for you.
Yeah, I like that, because the orange pill, it changes everything. So when you take the orange pill, you learn about finance, and that's step one. But then it opens your eyes up to things like health, like we've been talking about. But it also opens your mind up to your own mind and your own thoughts. And that's actually something I've been thinking a lot about lately, is having mental sovereignty. So taking back control of what thoughts go into your brain. Because if you don't think about that, then you're just going to be at the whim of whatever the fiat world wants to put in your brain, whatever thoughts they want to put in. And these thoughts come at you from all angles throughout your day, through advertising, through the apps that you're on, through TV, Netflix. So if you're not very careful about these inputs, and you're just allowing yourself to be programmed, then you're not really living your own life. You're just living a life that's not your own design, and it's been programmed for you by the fiat world. So the orange pill it includes this taking back your thoughts too. So you take back your finances, take back your physical health, take back your thoughts and your mental health, and that really is a recipe for living a life that is just much more aligned with what your soul wants. And so, the orange pill really is all that you need.
Yeah, it's that if you give your keys away, someone else will hold it for you, and the same with control and sovereignty and whatever you comes to your mind. Like, giving up control always comes with someone else has that control then for you. It's also like with self-custody always, if you don't hold your own keys, someone else will hold them for you, which means you don't have to deal with the stress with holding the keys, but you also don't get the freedom and the sovereignty that comes with holding the keys. So right. It's the same with like seeing what comes in your mind and being actually mindful of that. And it's great, really cool. I asked every guest, each and every of my guests that comes new on the show, one question, and the question is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
So besides Bitcoin, so I've always been on this personal transformation journey, and so that's one of the reasons why I love Bitcoin so much, is because it kind of helped me embody some of the principles that I've been trying to learn through books and seminars. But I found that by embracing Bitcoin, it essentially just changes you in all the ways that all of these personal transformation courses, that you can do all the reading, you can go to all the seminars, but it's not going to change you in the way that Bitcoin changes you. So essentially what I've learned is that you can learn everything that you need to learn through just embracing these principles of Bitcoin. And it even gets to a spiritual level too, because Bitcoin is deeply spiritual. And Bitcoin is essentially aligned with the frequency of truth. And so when you align with Bitcoin, all of your false layers shed, all of these fiat identities start to fade away. And so it what you can learn from me besides Bitcoin is that Bitcoin is not just Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a tool for this spiritual growth and for this personal transformation. And so what I would encourage people to do is not look at Bitcoin as just Bitcoin, but look at it as this incredible tool for spiritual growth and personal transformation. And if you view it that way, it will lead your life into a very good direction.
I love that. That's really cool. Thank you so much, Dr. Satoshi. And we have one question. We have an routine in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you the question, do you think that the USA pushing forward with stable coins is a Trojan horse or a risk to Bitcoin?
So I'm not really into stable coins. I don't really follow them that much, but I think that we are moving into this digital world, and it makes sense for the government to have stable coins if they're not going to be fully on a Bitcoin standard. Ideally, they would just adopt Bitcoin. But if they're going to adopt stable coins, I guess it makes sense. But we just have to be very careful that it doesn't become a tool for surveillance, like with the CBDCs. And it does seem like they are trying to make it like that. So we have to be extremely careful. But if you are living in a Bitcoin world, you can kind of shelter yourself from that and not be exposed to that. But that also kind of leads into this other concept that I recently heard about from a Bitcoin philosopher named Yoni Appelberg. He talks about how Bitcoin actually could become the ultimate tool for surveillance, because it's a common misconception that things are anonymous on the Bitcoin network. I know Bitcoiners know that things are not anonymous and everything can be tracked, but I don't think we've really thought about that if everything can be tracked, then Bitcoin itself could actually turn out to be the exact thing that the exact opposite of what we want it to become. So we're concerned about stable coins becoming a tool for surveillance, but as Bitcoiners, we need to think about how do we prevent Bitcoin from becoming a tool for surveillance. And it's something that actually Snowden brought up in his talk at the 2024 Bitcoin conference. And I think it's not talked about enough, is understanding the risks of hyper-Bitcoinization, and Bitcoin becoming an Orwellian tool of surveillance is something that we need to think a lot more about.
Yeah, I think that there will be really good layer 2 solutions, because it's abundantly important that we have the Bitcoin main layer as it is right now. And of course, they're like mixing things. There is no KYC thing. So that's what, like, the problem is not really in Bitcoin. The problem is more like with the KYC processing in Bitcoin, and then like attaching addresses and then tracking those coins with kind of the surveillance power of coin tracking and the KYC processes of exchanges. It definitely is a problem, and it definitely doesn't get talked about enough. I personally hope and I feel like we will get through this. And I think also layer 2 solutions will enhance privacy a lot. Mm-hmm. And the main layer will be a luxury to transact in. I think Bob Burnett has it so nicely covered, where he says, we are rolling in Rolls Royce. when we transact on the main layer. This will be a luxury that not a lot of people will have. That's just how Bitcoin will scale. One transaction can go up to the hundreds, maybe in thousands of dollars in transaction fees alone, and that's a good thing. Like if you're new to Bitcoin, that might be like a very hard topic and a very hard pill to swallow. if someone listens, oh, what, $1,000 to transact, the system is broken. But we need that to keep the system decentralized and incentivized to attack, to defend itself with a lot of hash power. So we need the transaction fee to actually go up. And it's so funny because if the transaction fee is low, the people come out like, oh, we have a budget problem with the miners. If the transaction fee is high, people are like, oh no, it's way too high, the system is broken. I'm like, yeah, you cannot have it both ways. But yeah, it's a problem, but I think we will get through that, and especially with privacy layer 2 options, we will have a nice solution there. I'm very optimistic on that.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, I think it's just important for us to think about.
Yeah, definitely. And UTXO management, I think a lot of people are not aware of the UTXO management aspect of Bitcoin. So you really have to think of, like, are you connecting non-KYC Bitcoin with KYC Bitcoin? Because then they are KYC Bitcoin if you connect them in your UTXOs. So yeah, that's a fun topic. I think we should explore that another time more. But yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Satoshi, for being on. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask a question, and reach out to you?
So the place I'm focusing most of my energy on now is YouTube. I started a podcast called the Signal Podcast. My handle is Dr. Satoshi. I'm also on Instagram at Dr. Satoshi Wellness, and on X, Dr. Satoshi 00. So yeah, if anything I said resonated, please feel free to check me out on these places. And yeah, I've got a lot of good stuff coming out.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.